Hi, welcome to Marvel Maniac, an MCU Aftershow. This is your host, Eric Cicada, aka Mr. Honest. I'm back this week for a one-movie review. We have to do this movie as a whole episode because of how iconic it is. It sits in a place on the Infinity Saga where everything kind of branches off of this movie, and it's this first movie of Marvel Phase 3. I know you might be counting on hearing Age of Ultron within the near future. I haven't covered that one yet, but I've covered most of the Captain America movies, and this movie is like an Avengers movie, and it's kind of fun to look at it just as like a piece of the pie on its own. How does this movie stand up on its own 2 feet, aside from the other movies that are hits that are surrounding it? And right off the bat, I explained the significance of this movie. This was a turning point for the Avengers, and if this movie didn't exist, I think Infinity War would have been the only movie with Thanos in it. If you're really asking me, it divides the Avengers, and the bad guy wins. We hadn't seen that yet, to this capacity at the very least, and that's what we're talking about today. Captain America: Civil War. Now, I did see this movie when it came out in theaters. It was a huge movie. It was an Avengers movie, pretty much. Even though Captain America: Civil War, I do see why it was Cap's movie. It was told from Cap's perspective. But there's enough movie and enough happening in the movie to pick a side, which is really hard if you love these heroes as much as I do. Picking a side was never something you really thought was on the table. The theater was just as loud as any other great Marvel film. This movie gave me a lot of nostalgia watching it, and it's felt like a new movie for so long because of all the stuff that happens in it. But it's coming up. It's been a while since this movie came out, way back in 2016, but it set up so much, and it was a culmination of so much. It was like we needed this kind of movie in the multiverse saga. We could have used Secret Invasion or just a team up at this point in the series. We don't have that in the multiverse saga, and I think that's one of its biggest weaknesses. I am talking with constructive criticism of the multiverse saga based off of fan feedback. The fans are all over the place. There's people who will just die for another Marvel movie, almost like me, and it's got to be decent. And if I could follow it, I'll most likely accept it into my headcanon if it makes sense. There's one singular show that of the whole MCU that did that for me, and I'm going to do an episode on that, a critique episode. I think I've talked about this before. Anyway, so I have a lot of nostalgia, especially for this movie. There's so many great characters in it. Scarlet Witch and Vision are just kind of like starting their relationship. They're on opposite sides. The introduction of two of the most important characters going forward. Thank God we got Chadwick Boseman as the Black Panther for the first time in this movie. We got Spider-Man, the new Spider-Man, Tom Holland, and Chadwick Boseman. What addition to the MCU. And not just that, we are also bringing in Paul Rudd, who has had his own film by now, but this is his second appearance, and that interaction is also hilarious. So there's a lot happening in this movie, and I really kind of like the themes of the movie. The cost of freedom versus security, and you can kind of see how each character got where they are mentally for these Sokovia Accords and how they're going to react to them. Captain America, he's been pretty much under an oppressive hand his whole life. He was fighting in World War II, and he doesn't trust the government. He doesn't trust having them have a hold on the Avengers when they, for an example, Cap says, what if we need to go somewhere and they won't let us? What if this or that? And Iron Man, Tony Stark is so right and self-righteous in his own right, but it's a little bit tiny little bit, I don't know, like he caused a lot of the problems in Age of Ultron. I feel like Sokovia was his fault because he has to take fault for Ultron. And I always kind of felt like that lady who walked up to him and told him about her son, you know, that was heartbreaking. That kind of like really put Tony, you know, into a mindset of, I want to write this, you know. It's almost like how he wanted to put a suit of armor around the world, but he, you know, can't do that. So what is he going to do when he reacts to these Sokovia Accords? Of course he's going to be on that side. We need to be put in check. It's an exact quote. You could see from Cap's perspective, like he could even be potentially thinking that this is like Tony's fault. And they do show the Battle of New York as one of the destructions. And from my opinion, honestly, that's not the Avengers' fault. Like they didn't make that mess. And then on the screen, like it shows like the Hulk smashing into a building and that's just ripping the building apart. It's just funny for me because I was trying to defend it, but all I could think of is Captain America saying to Hulk, "Smash," and he did. Like he was smashing walls and everything. He didn't hold back. I was a rage-filled monster out there on that battlefield in New York that day. So they probably bring their blame kind of like on the Hulk and like just the craziness of this thing. Like the Hulk is like a crazy concept. We've been watching Marvel for so long. We're like, oh yeah, the Hulk. Well, when he gets raging mad like that, that's my favorite. I really hope we get that back at some point. I'm getting a little tiny bit off topic. Now, ultimately, this movie revolves around friendship and betrayal. Because Captain America has made a lot of friends in his time on screen. One of them is James Buchanan Barnes, Bucky, the Winter Soldier. Someone who Steve could have easily given up on by now and helped catch and just put away. But Steve is convinced Bucky is in there. If you hadn't seen or you've forgotten in the previous Captain America film, Winter Soldier, he's ended up letting Steve live and saving Steve from drowning at their end of movie fight. And that told Steve there's a reason that gives him a reason to believe that Bucky is in there. And this movie opens up with Bucky being tortured and the red book that comes to play. And oh my God, the villain of this movie, he wins. Did I mention that? It's starting a trend, honestly. The Avengers needed a win by Endgame because the next coming together film would be Infinity War. Our 100th episode special. This is episode 76. 77. Stick around. We're gonna be making episodes all the time, and I think we're on a good run here. So I can see both sides of the argument here, and I think it makes sense for like why which characters go on whichever side. I'm not gonna name the teams off the top of my head, but we know Tony Stark did a lot of recruiting. Like Tony Stark has Spider-Man and the Black Panther, and it didn't take much to bring the Black Panther in. The Sokovia Accords aren't crazy either. Like I could see myself signing them. Would you sign the Accords if you were a superhero? Would it depend on your circumstances as a superhero? Would it depend on your history as a superhero with the government? In Thunderbolts, that's coming out next year, it seems like we're getting exactly what, the government wants out of an Avengers team called the Thunderbolts. They're kind of like Dark Avengers, with an asterisk at the end. Thunderbolts with an asterisk, and there's a secret that will be revealed as to what that stands for, what that means, like a temporary name. I think Thunderbolts is that movie that we need and needed in the multiverse saga, and I haven't even seen a trailer for it yet. Just the concept is so good, bringing in characters from all different edges of the MCU and putting them in like a Suicide Squad-esque movie. That is a smart idea. That could be like us underrated, going in, not expecting much, and walking out like Guardians of the Galaxy level good. I think, I know that's gonna be a good freaking movie. They've been building up to that movie. If anything, it's the main thing that they actually have been building up with Val stepping into the movies, the post-credit scenes. I could see her all around the place just getting this thing ready. So I can't wait for that. And this movie is an event film as well. It's not a standalone film. This movie could just be called Avengers Civil War. It could just be called Marvel Studios Civil War. But they go with Captain America because this is all tied back to Bucky. And the very beginning of the movie, we see this revealed throughout the movie through flashbacks, and at the end through a flashback, and Tony's seeing this. It was predicted a little bit. My girlfriend at the time's younger brother, I was a little mad because he predicted it. But he didn't know. He predicted it, that Bucky killed Stark's parents, and it is briefly shown when they are in the underground. Captain America and Scarlet Witch, Scarlett Johansson, Black Widow, when they're down in that bunker, and Zola starts telling them about everything with Hydra. You see Howard Stark like on the screen, and it says deceased. It doesn't show you that the Winter Soldier did it. And I don't know if Steve just pushed it together, or, but he did know. He knew that Tony's parents were taken by Hydra at the very least, and we see that. But you can see it happens in a split second in the middle of his movie, where moments later the whole place is about to explode. To have Baron Zemo in the background, who we learn about throughout the movie and learn his whole story at the end when he's talking to Black Panther, like who he really is and whatnot. It is such an interesting way of stirring the plot during a political movie, and he stirs it oh so well. And I always forget, the part of the movie that I always forget, and it surprises me, is when Bucky is seen on the run after the terrorist attack on the Wakandan. I think it was on the United Nations, but the Wakandan King T'Chaka got killed. And it is Bucky being framed for this. And later in the movie, what convinces Tony to go help Steve and Bucky is that he gets the intel that the man who was supposed to interrogate Bucky that day was murdered. And he also had... It's also revealed that he had like Bucky's like a face mask thing, kind of like Black Widow has in the end of Captain America: Winter Soldier, like the face thing. He's using something to make himself. So this is Baron Zemo, not Bucky, that did this. And after all that Bucky's done, including the part where he and Steve actually run from the SWAT members, he keeps making himself look worse and worse, but he's innocent, and it's hard to see that even as an audience member. So later in the film, you can like kind of imagine why it hits and how it hits Tony so hard. It's very circumstantial, Tony's reaction. We'll get to that towards the end of the episode, obviously, but we kind of got to talk about it as a whole, because this is a betrayal between Tony and Steve. And I think Tony being kind of set like in the placeholder of antagonists, while in the background Baron Zemo is pulling his strings. Iron Man is kind of the antagonist to Captain America in this movie. They both have different ideologies and different plans going forward. The Sokovia Accords just breaks the Avengers when it's introduced. They're not for it. And a lot of the reason that Tony, I swear, a lot of the reasons that Tony isn't with just on Cap's side fighting this is he personally, and he should be a little more vocal about how big a hand he had in the leading up to this and the destruction. And I don't hate Tony for what he did in Age of Ultron, but it's just a butterfly effect. You can't just say, well, the robot went bad and the robot did all the bad things. You created the robot. You're just going to have to take the blame. You took the risk. So and I don't doubt that that is exactly why Tony is acting this way. He's ashamed. He let people die. The way he puts it's like, we were all just out there kicking ass. We went home. Like, he loathes himself for the death and destruction that comes with being a hero, and he gives himself no credit for what he's done as a hero. And it's very well performed by Robert Downey Jr. If you're wondering about where this man shows off some of his acting chops in the MCU, it is definitely in this movie. This man is torn apart by the end of this thing. And not only him, Steve is as well. The whole team is. And God, what a bad time to get split up. Like, Thanos is coming. We knew that even from post-credit scene of Age of Ultron. Thanos is gearing up, and you guys just divided like the Beatles, like Hulk says. Mark Ruffalo says I can't think of his name. Bruce Banner. His name's Bruce Banner. Bruce Banner says he broke up like the Beatles. At one point, I remember Scarlett Johansson. I can never say frickin' Natasha Romanoff, who is one of my favorite characters. You know, she says that they've had a lot of bad public moves, and that for now, like, this would be a good thing, a good look for them if they decided to do this. Just think, like, at the end of the movie, Tony does come there as a friend, and he's there under different circumstances because there's more Winter Soldiers, there's more super soldiers that Hydra has in this base, and apparently that's who Zemo's been trying to get this whole time. The ending is set up for us like most Marvel films, like, you know what this last fight's going to be. Well, you kind of know from the trailers, but if you're in the movie, you're not really thinking about that. You know that Captain America and Iron Man are going to team up to fight 6 super soldiers, and it's going to be a brutal battle. But when they get there, they're all dead, and that surprises our group of buddies. You know, for now, Steve, Tony, and Bucky together. Tony calls him the Manchurian Candidate. Easy. Come as a friend. But that moment where we know the side of the car crash and like it's starting to hit us just like it's hitting Tony, but it even gives us a cinematic view. And Bucky killed Tony's parents. And it's sad for us as an audience. We watched Bucky we watched a young Howard Stark, know who Bucky was. So when we hear him say Lieutenant Barnes, and then he beats him senseless, and then he chokes out Tony's mom, and Tony can see all this. I don't know why they recorded this for literally the dark, twisted shit just like this. That's why they recorded it. The Hydra's so evil, and you cut off one head, and blah, blah, blah. Here's Baron Zemo, not even affiliated with Hydra, but pretty much acting for them. Why would they record that? It's just that I never really thought about that. So could this have been avoided? Yes. Steve has an unwavering moral compass, and he burdens himself with leadership. These are base notes I'm going off of. His relationship with Bucky ultimately is stronger because he's just getting Bucky back. So he'll go to great lengths to the end of the world to protect his friend because he's maybe the only one who understands what he's been through and believes that he's in there. And for the first time, this barely happened at all in the last movie, Winter Soldier, where we realized, Bucky doesn't really remember Steve at all. Bucky remembers Steve now. And he's slowly across this film until he gets kidnapped, or not kidnapped, until Baron Zemo interrogates him and does the initiation thing that make him the soldier, and then they make him look real. He makes him look real bad. This is the thing that will tear the Avengers apart. Baron Zemo knows this. Tony has had a great story up until this point in the Marvel Cinematic Universe, and his position, going from a carefree billionaire arms dealer selling weapons that kill his own people and doesn't know it. It's a revelation for him, the Sokovia Accords, and it's a node. He is the leader in putting that in action. He's working with General Ross. It's not out of character, but it's almost a little bit like we don't usually see Tony so bowing to the government, but he wants to make things right. And it's not going to take long for him to make things right, because in the back of Tony's mind, Tony's worried about a bigger threat. Why did those aliens come here? Will they come here again? You know, that's what Tony's thinking most of the time, I believe, from the first Avengers. That's why he built Ultron, peacekeeping initiative, put a suit of armor around the world, like he said. And now, you know, he's faced with the Sokovia Accords, and he just can't say no to that. He's messed up so many times. And it's hard to say he messed up because he's our hero. It's a tough perspective because I love Iron Man. I got to say, I think I'm a bigger Iron Man fan than Captain America. Not that I don't love Captain America. I just love Iron Man just like a little bit more, you know, if I'm being honest. So maybe I have a bias here. He does his presentation at the beginning. That's his first introduction of young RDJ. And we see a lot of this throughout the MCU, you know, going forward, even with Samuel L. Jackson. You go back a little bit, you could see Kurt Russell in Guardians 2. The de-aging Marvel does is unlike anything I've ever seen in my life. It was flawless. And this is that thing that Tony ends up calling barf. And Jake Gyllenhaal is secretly, not that we see him, they don't even know this yet, but, you know, they retcon that Jake Gyllenhaal is the part of Tony's department that helped create barf, and a lot of people are not so happy about the way he named it and kind of disrespected it, and then gave it to Kid, who has superhuman abilities as Spider-Man. But that's for another episode. We're going to talk about the entire home trilogy, as they call it. It has been officially called that, the Spider-Man home trilogy. And we're going to do an episode similar to like Guardians, where we'll talk about this Spider-Man's journey all the way through the MCU, starting right here in Civil War. It was a big introduction and a kind of risk, as like they're going to be putting Spider-Man in this movie. Wait, but the trailer was all any of us needed to be invested and ready to see it, because he takes Captain America's shield from him and says, "Hey guys, under Roos," you know, that is iconic from the trailer alone, because I can't tell you, I probably watched that trailer like 30 times just because of how epic I'm like, Spider-Man, he's here. He's finally here. Oh my god. And they say homecoming in Bucky's like brainwashing words, and it makes me think of it, like, even then we knew homecoming was coming. We were like, well, what does this have to do with Spider-Man? Is Spider-Man gonna have like a controversial Hydra plot thing going on? No, nobody thought that. And not alone, Spider-Man, who's a great comedic relief at a time in the movie where it could be played a little bit darker, but there are like light moments, like Natasha and Clint saying like, we're still friends, right? You know, and then it's just friends fighting. So we know they're not going full force on these guys. Like, they're not going full force. They're like trying to play stop Captain America. Just stop him. We're not trying to kill this guy. I'm glad Captain America gave Spider-Man so much credit as to, during the airport fight in Germany, he just drops that building on his head. And I think he knew that Spider-Man was pretty amazing once he saw him take his shield. I mean, nobody's done that to him before. So I think Steve can pick out special people. And I love the exchange that they have. I love it. And another character that they dared introduce in this movie, and a second new huge character, was Black Panther. And his whole story in this film is really well self-contained. Even though we've never been to Wakanda, we don't know much about Wakanda except for that they are the place where vibranium, Captain America's shield, that metal, that's where it comes from. Some of the rarest metal on Earth, but they have a ton of it. And you know, T'Challa was there in good nature trying to get the Accords in order, and King T'Chaka, we get to see him again in Black Panther. We'll do a Black Panther episode 2, I promise. We're doing lots of episodes, but this is really important because the biggest thing Zemo did in this movie was this terrorist attack. I mean, aside from what he does at the end between Cap and Tony, I mean, the way he divides them is insane. But this took the life of Black Panther's father, and now he's king and Black Panther. So I think him being in the movie, it adds a whole different layer on the outside of the heroes we know. And we can kind of see those heroes from a special perspective, a newcomer's perspective. And there's always in these movies like a self-contained story for a general audience that's coming in, maybe missed a couple, doesn't know, about Age of Ultron. There's a good enough story self-contained in this one movie for a newcomer. The biggest scene in this movie was the airport battle, and we knew from the trailers. I didn't know it was an airport, maybe because I wasn't digging in the trailers. I usually try to not watch them too much, so I enjoy it in the movie. But this one, I remember watching a lot. But this is what we were all waiting for, and it is an epic scale. In the trailers, they blocked off Spider-Man running with the group. Tony's got a jack team, but so does Captain America. The one thing I'm thinking of right now, obviously, take a guess. Paul Rudd is Ant-Man, turning into Giant Man for the first time, grabbing War Machine like he's a toy, and he becomes the main focus of battle. He is actually the exact reason that Captain America escapes. I mean, one of my favorite lines ever said by Tony, and it's funny that I can't actually quote it word for word. Does anyone have any shockingly amazing abilities like that they haven't shown yet? He's like, what the heck? And that was the first time we'd ever seen Giant Man. I know Paul Rudd does Giant Man in at least three more movies after this. And he gets bigger every time. That's the crazy part. He was so cool to see that. And the way Peter Parker is like, if you guys seen that old movie called Empire Strikes Back with the snow thingies, and you know what? It's like, how old is this guy? Already asked Tony, and it's like, I don't know. He's fresh, he's young, but he may have a point. That's how they take him down, like those giant machines on Hoth. And when Paul Rudd gets taken down, another one of my favorite. This movie's so good. He's like, does anybody have any orange slices? And at the time, like, that joke is like a football joke, because when I was in youth football, between big, I think halftime, they give all the guys orange slices, nice cold orange slices. And I think that's how Scott saw this whole situation. Like, I don't think he would have said yes if it wasn't for Captain America. Like, he seems to have a lot of admiration for Cap. Oh man, that fight in the airport had so many memorable moments. The first thing that comes to mind after that is T'Challa, Black Panther, going up against Cap and scratching his shield. And that's never happened because Captain America has a vibranium steel shield, and it's indestructible. But where does the vibranium come from? Wakanda, right? So Black Panther has vibranium as well. So we learn that the shield is not invincible. As we later see Thanos completely ruin it in Endgame. So Cap and Bucky get away. I'm wondering if Steve took a really long route so they couldn't catch him to where they were going. Which I found is in Romania. I don't remember exactly. I think it's Romania, but that's where at least was filmed. That took them a long time to get there because Tony had to do quite a few things. He drops Tom Holland off at home, like we know from Homecoming. But however, we might be able to place that after the Cap fight. Then Tony visits the raft where all Captain America's teammates are being held prisoner. And Nat is not among them. She escaped. As we see in Black Widow, we get to see her being kind of hunted down on the run. She's so cool. And I'm going to talk more about Black Widow one day. I hope she comes back. I don't care. Bring her back too. We should start, giving her a little more props for her giant sacrifice. We know what Tony did. Now he's coming back evil. We know it's not Tony, though. It's Vincent. Victor Von Doom. Vincent Von Doom. At your service. Okay, I'm sorry about that. The ending part, that I've been leading up to, it's hard because it makes me hurt. It makes me feel so sad that they're fighting each other. And Baron Zemo, upon arrival, he's standing behind a bomb wall because that's what they had to build for these super soldiers. If you watched Marvel's What If, the Ultron episode, if not one of the ending episodes. What if Ultron won? Black Widow and Hawkeye are alive, and they go to this exact location to find like a file on what they need. So that's a really good episode. I believe is What If Ultron won and What If. We did an episode on it, so you can watch it and listen, and let me know what you think about our kind of older episodes. Are you liking the new format? A little bit of jumping all over the place. You, a Marvel viewer who most likely has already seen most of this and could probably just use a fresh take, rehash, get excited, and just talk about the enjoyment we have while watching these movies. If you're a newcomer, that's awesome too. How does the show sound to you? Are you confused or are you following? I mean, I'm speaking English. If you see this movie, then listen to this podcast, you'll understand what's going on. Like I said, self-contained stories that lead to bigger ones. And those stories are also self-contained, leading to bigger ones. As in, this leads into Infinity War and to Endgame. This is a key movie. Zemo, one thing I don't like is, I think it was Cap who asked him in the bomb cellar, before Zemo reveals the tape, he asked if he was from Sokovia, and is that why you're doing this? And I think he denied it, but later when Zemo was talking to Black Panther, he was talking, it was because of Sokovia. Like, he literally said, like, oh, we watched, you could see Iron Man. My daughter said she could see the Iron Man out the window. And I thought, oh, we were a few miles away. Like, no matter what, they can't hit us. And the giant impact of all that land ended up killing his whole family. So maybe he just didn't want to respect Steve, or he didn't want to give away any information as to get their minds on something else. All he wanted was to put them together and have them watch this movie. And when Tony watches this movie, never in any film he's ever done, I've seen a 180-degree turning point for him where he loses it. And I mean, you gotta relate to him, because I would lose it too. I would definitely lose it. This battle symbolizes the true fracture of the Avengers. I have that in a written note. I use a program to help me or organize my notes. Anyway, the effectiveness of a villain who wins not through power, but through manipulation. Baron Zemo, making him one of the greatest villains in MCU history, and a lot of potential going forward. I thought he was supposed to be in Thunderbolts, but I don't know if they're doing that anymore. In the comics, he dons this purple mask, which they show him often in The Falcon and the Winter Soldier. We did episodes on that too. We covered that as it was coming out. So check it out. What do you think? Do you want more episodes like this, or where I do one movie and get really into it? Or do you guys like the big episodes where we talk about a whole franchise and kind of look at that bigger story? We really can do either or whenever. I'm liking this way for now. I felt a little weird about skipping Age of Ultron, but I got a lot going on. I'm going to see a wedding this week. I'm going to a wedding this weekend. And I was thinking, like, I want to do a movie I know really well and I want to watch right now. And I want Age of Ultron to have a little more put into it, in terms of just, there's so much happening in that movie at once. So I try to keep the Avengers films like as their own episodes. Infinity War, episode 100. I'm going to keep saying it. MarvelManiacPod@gmail.com for your feedback. Please send positive feedback and positive reviews or thumbs up or 5 stars or whatever it is on what platform you're listening to us on. Don't hesitate to give us a thumbs up, because it helps us, and us as in me, and me as in someone who just wants to keep doing this, and I love doing this, and I'm so excited to get to 100 episodes. I'm not rushing there, I promise you, and it's still not decided whether I cover every episode of Agatha all along, but there will be some coverage of that to some extent while it's happening. I'm still figuring some of that out, and but anyways, aside from that, back to this moment where Tony sees the video of his parents getting murdered by Bucky. You can see Bucky's in a trance. They Bucky can't explain himself. Tony asks, do you even remember? And he's like, I remember all of them, which is really awesomely explored in the Falcon and the Winter Soldier. Bucky goes from thing to thing to thing, like, without realizing that this man has been gone for a while. Like, he got dusted as well. So he's a little out of time by the time that show comes around. It's hard to see Tony getting hurt, especially by both Bucky and Steve at the same time. Another thing that just made me side with Iron Man. What are you, Team Iron Man or Team Cap? Send us a message at Marvel Maniac Pod, all of your platforms, and we are marvelmaniacpod at gmail.com. We do have a Patreon. Hasn't been updated in a bit. I say that every episode. It will be updated. I'm just trying to keep the show up and running right now and getting a good flow, and I think that's happening. So, Civil War was crazy. The emotional impact on the characters in this movie carries through the rest of their movies. Iron Man, he still brings Spider-Man into the fold, and I think he kind of feels young through Spider-Man. We don't get to see a lot of like Tony planning for Spider-Man. It's always like a big surprise for him. I die inside at the part where Captain America tells Iron Man he's my friend, and Tony says, "So was I." And oh my God, they're beating each other senseless. Tony gets Bucky's arm off, and Cap gets on top of him and just starts wailing on Iron Man. And dang, we know Thanos is coming, right? Anyway, they start to walk away, Bucky and Steve has his shield, and this is the heart-wrenching line. You can't. That's not yours. My dad made that shield. Captain America drops the shield, shows the claw marks on it. We don't see him pick that up for years. Oh my goodness. Oh, and he's gone, and they're split up, and this left us kind of in a point of, how are they going to come back together? This movie made for so many twists and turns. It was a thriller, slightly political. The conversation between Zemo and Black Panther, so Black Panther can get some closure. We'll see him get closure on his father's death in his own movie, of course, but for him to get some temporary closure on why his father died, and to get that explanation from Zemo to T'Challa, I think it was honestly the most important. I love how he kind of just sits back and like watches how this unfolds. He knows, he feels and knows something is wrong and that they're being played at one point, and it's a really great first outing for this character because we don't expect him to. I didn't expect him to forgive, and he forgives. He forgives Zemo, and he stops Zemo from offing himself, which probably was one of the greatest, most noble things you could do, especially to someone who killed your family. But Zemo deserves to live, and the world of living is not done with you yet. Black Panther tells him, and that's where we. I don't know if that's where we leave Black Panther. That's where I leave Black Panther in my head. And then he goes on to do his own movie, and he gets Infinity War. So Chadwick Boseman is a legend. I ain't gonna talk about what. I'm not gonna get sad about him being gone. I'm gonna celebrate him being here and what we got from him and the performance of a lifetime he gave for this character, keeping secret an illness that would weigh on other people, and he didn't want to be looked at like that, so he kept it a dang secret for so long because he wanted to be doing these movies, and he made a cultural impact as Black Panther. People love Black Panther, and yeah, it's great to see Shuri as the part. I don't agree with the recasting. People who want him recasted just yet. Let that time pass a little bit. Maybe let his son grow up and take the mantle. There's a lot they could do. I think Shuri is a great fill-in for now. She's fun. She's funny. She is a genius, and she can fight. I mean, she's got it all. This movie was perceived really well. Like I said, my theater was cheering, like in most MCU films. There was a lot of audience, like, captivation, and it's worth a rewatch. You want to watch it again the minute you've seen it. finish because there's so much that happened, especially in that airport battle. Like, you're sitting with what happened, like, between Tony and Steven, like how this is definitely setting up Infinity War. You know that, and it's setting them up to lose. It's setting them up to lose because they're divided. If they're together, they're safe. If they're divided, they fall. This movie did that, and in retrospect of Infinity War and Endgame, this movie, going back, seeing what it was setting up, it makes for an even better story. Gives you chills. It's Marvel at its best. And I'm not one of those people that are saying the Marvel Cinematic Universe has lost its touch, its quality. I'm a believer. I don't give up on things that I love. Deadpool and Wolverine was a ride of my life. And I didn't hate most of these movies that came out so far in Phase 5. I didn't hate them. People hate on Ant-Man and the Wasp so much. If anything, it gives us a shot to make the Doom story right, because Kang maybe isn't as worthy of a villain for this next Avengers film. Everything happens for a reason. So we're going to see a lot of these characters again. Baron Zemo, I told you, Falcon and the Winter Soldier, and it sets up new movies, the Spider-Man trilogy, a Black Panther set of movies, and it sets up the future for the Avengers. So this is an anchor point of the MCU, of the sacred timeline, and this is about where I'm gonna cut it. I love this movie. I don't want to call it my favorite, but it could easily be my favorite. It was my favorite. Infinity War is probably always going to just be my favorite. Let's see what the Russos can do with Doomsday and Secret Wars, though. I'm not putting that. I ain't putting that, like, any movie can take its place. Any movie. If Captain America Brave New World is considered the biggest accomplishment in my eyes, I will flaunt that everywhere. But Infinity War is the greatest movie Marvel's ever made. And by God, I think we got some of that magic on its way back. I really am not one of those haters, but when you hear something every day, you start to question. I'm not bored with the MCU. I can see it going on forever. I love it. I'm going to keep watching it no matter what. And that's like my personal, I'll be the last podcaster covering this stuff unless it goes so wrong we can't look back. They really need to stick the landing on Doctor Doom. They really need to stick that landing. And the Fantastic Four, like, those gotta be good. If they're not, we're going into huge giant budget movies, unsure of how we feel about the characters. If Fantastic Four flops, they should push the two Avengers movies back a year each. Sorry, but they should, because so much is happening. And I'm not a huge Doctor Doom fan, but from this season of Fortnite and everything I've been hearing about him, the character deserves a build up. And a video did point out, I don't know which video this was, but we really felt, it seems like we got a lot of build up to Thanos, but all that building up was us as an audience. We got like a scene, like an inch of his face at the end of the first Avengers, and then at the end of Age of Ultron, we really get to see him grab the gauntlet. In Guardians of the Galaxy, we see his relationship with Ronan. So those are the only things we see. Enough to know that there's a big bad lurking out there. We know from the comics how big, bad, powerful Doom can get. So going in with that mindset, knowing just in broad strokes what this character is like, being ready to accept it as RDJ. And if RDJ signed on to these movies, doesn't mean they can't use him as other variants of Tony Stark as well. He's in the movie. He's getting paid to be in the movie. He can play different parts in the movie. So I think we're going to get an Iron Man variant, at least one, which would be so cool. We're going there, guys. It's like 2 years. In 2 years, we'll be in the middle. And Spider-Man is very strongly rumored to have his next movie be in between Secret Wars and Doomsday, but Doomsday's first, obviously. That will be insane. I want to see the Spider-Man together again, and these next few episodes, I'm not going to tell what I'm going to do next because I have a giant list of things I'm aiming to do, and it's depending on if I have a guest or if I have a lot of time. But you can bet your bottom dollar that I will be back here next week. We're experimenting with times of posting the episode. It was Friday at 7 Central last week. Today's episode will be Friday at 6 p.m. Central Time. And I'm going to try 8 p.m. the following week. We're just testing the best times to release. I used to release like at midnight. I'll be trying all sorts of stuff with my releases. So if you think you missed an episode, don't worry. It's coming. I don't plan on leaving the podcast anytime soon unless something really crazy happens in my life. Give me a sign of the cross for that one. Knock on some wood. If there's anything I missed in covering Captain America Civil War that you wished I talked about, send me an email. marvelmaniacpod@gmail.com. I'm telling you, I love feedback, and it'll be featured on the show, unless you don't want it to be. In which case, you can just tell me, I don't want this on the show. No worries. Our email is open to you for suggestions and questions and just to overall hype each other up about the next big thing, which right now is Captain America Brave New World. So it's going to give us a lot of time these next 5 months to just talk about the MCU so much and talk about what we love about it, get some new people in here, get some old friends, and it's going to be a good old time. And that's all I got. And until next time, Avengers, disassemble.